From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We are joined, as always, with our super producer, Andrew the Triforce Howard. Most importantly, you are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. Previously on Stuff They Don't Want You to Know, you had a bunch of Leos digging into astrology. True story, folks. We just learned that our producer and one of our hosts share a birthday.
What does it mean?
What does it mean?
That's a really good day to be born on.
Your chakras are aligned.
All right, yes. Yeah, we consulted our constellations. Some of our astute listeners may have predicted that we would return to the concept of astrology and government. Folks, please check out our first episode. We had I think we had a pretty good exploration of the nation of Myanmar, which in a plot twist, according to the advice of soothsayers, decided to move their capital to a place that was like 300 clicks north and hadn't been built. And we also just had a great interview about Myanmar following up on another episode.
We did. And spoiler alert, if you haven't listened to the first episode yet, they moved that capital and then there was a devastating storm that rolled through right in the area a couple of years later, which is, it can lead you towards, a lot like the way astrology in general can, towards believing that it had full merit.
Right, yeah. We move our capital, say the generals of Myanmar, we move it north to avoid a disaster in 2005, 2008, a cyclone hits. Mm-hmm. So have we predicted the future, or was that statistically inevitable? Please do check out our exploration of Myanmar with Denise Chan from Scam Factory. Check out our earlier episodes on astrology and the government. And by the way, we did a little bit of a cliffhanger in our last episode because we were talking about a place that a lot of people in the audience have not visited. But Noel, Matt, as we teased earlier in chapter 1, astrology and the government gets a little bit closer to home than a lot of people would assume.
Wait, you talking about in these United States?
1600?
What? No.
Pennsylvania?
No.
What? Hey, think on that. We'll be right back after a few words from our sponsors.
Here are the facts. In the first chapter of our exploration regarding astrology and the government, we spent a lot of time on a brief history of astrology, right? It's a type of divination. We did what I think is a pretty fun experiment with another type of divination, bibliomancy.
Yeah, that's where you open a book to a random page, pick out a passage, and that passage is going to somehow apply to whatever question you asked or situation you're currently in.
Yeah. And it was, full disclosure, it was easier for us to do that versus other forms of divination like reading intros or reading
tea leaves. Right.
Yeah, tea leaves as well. Yes.
We are actively scrying every time we record one of these episodes.
Coffee
into our black mirrors.
spills, that'll also do it.
Also a thing. Yes, we
Well,
are
listen,
actively
we're
scrying.
being silly, but we really, as we've mentioned before, and not to backpedal or anything, we're not here to criticize anyone who really, puts sand into this stuff. And there are many folks that very much do. I look at it as another form of faith, another form of religion in many ways. So I don't think we're here to poo-poo anybody's beliefs or make anybody feel dumb in any form or fashion. We're just being silly guys.
Yeah. We all enjoy gallows humor, especially here in 2025. And we were exploring some key facts about astrology overall, right? We talked about how Western astrology is likely statistically the most familiar to many of us in the audience tonight, but there are varied other forms of astrological beliefs. Mesoamerican, Asiatic civilizations all created their own systems. For instance, you guys are probably, if I had to guess, you're probably roosters in Chinese horoscopes.
I believe I'm a rat.
You're a rat?
Are you a fire rat or a metal rat? Or the other flavor?
Electric rat.
Oh, hey, I love that.
Tight.
Use the yellow. You have to put the yellow whatever
electric
it is
rat.
on me. The energies.
Nice. Noel, do you have one? Do you know your Chinese horoscope?
I do not. I think I'm a rat. I do believe that I am a rat.
Okay. All right.
I could be wrong, though. But I think that I am a metal rat.
Tight.
Yeah.
That's a weird response, but yes.
No. It's I don't know. A metal rat sounds kind of scary, like some sort of like robo rat that comes for you.
Yeah. We also found that people leverage astrology for different reasons, right? In most casual horoscopes you encounter today, you will see less of an emphasis on predicting the future. Instead, you'll see, like you were saying earlier, a sort of diagnostic tool for psychology, right? Tell me more about why I make decisions, right? Is this so Sagittarius of me? Is this so Virgo? It's not attempting to tell you what to do with an empire. It's attempting to teach you more about yourself.
Mouser. That's the name. Mouser. Do you guys remember that from Teenage Mutant Ninja
I was
Turtles?
thinking there was a
The little
metal rat. Wasn't he like sort of like a bizarro Splinter? Isn't he sort of meant to be like the antithesis to like evil Splinter?
No, I thought they were just little tiny
They're
robots.
talking about the little guys. Yes, 100%. With
We're keeping all
their
of this.
chompy jaws. Don't they have chompy jaws? They have
got
chompy jaws.
They got chompies. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry,
No,
Ben.
thank
Didn't
you
mean
for
to
that nostalgia
completely
bomb, Matt. I appreciate it very much.
Important. This is why we're here together tonight. Third, we have to emphasize there is no universally accepted scientific basis supporting the claims of astrology. And that's a bummer for a lot of people, right?
Oh, yeah. Pretty big bummer. But, whatevs. That's why it gets into the belief system thing.
Yeah. Even though modern science does not assign any quantitative truth to astrology, a lot of people practice it, right? And it is, in the opinion of this show, a matter of belief or a matter of faith. You may have read your own horoscope as you tuned in tonight. If so, congratulations. We hope it was a good one. And I think in our previous episode, we talked a little bit about this. Like they're not really bad news horoscopes in the West, right?
No, just like there aren't really bad news fortune cookies, usually.
I got one fortune cookie, true story, one time that said, turn around.
Was someone there?
Yes.
Did they say boo?
They actually put the fortune cookie there. It was a weird situation.
Oh, that makes sense. That tracks. Yeah, I've never had a sinister fortune cookie before, but yeah, I mean, again, these things are meant to be super accessible, at least the ones that are way more editorialized and like published in more universally kind of read magazines and periodicals and stuff. But as we mentioned in the last episode, if you really go out for the more specific and complex types of astrological readings, then, you are going to get, your results may vary. Right? You're not necessarily always going to get some sort of like life-affirming thumbs up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, guys, in my world, which is highly limited, right? When it comes to my perspective and experience, astrology has been a lot on the fringes. That has a lot to do with where I grew up, who my parents were, geographically where I am, and all that stuff. Astrology was like a thing that I didn't encounter very often, especially growing up. Not until I got older did I see it more. I do not encounter it a lot when it comes to maybe the people who are in charge in the systems and organizations I interact with on a regular basis. At least they aren't openly talking about it, the people that run those things. Maybe it just doesn't feel like something that I associate with a boss or something like that. Do you guys have that same, experience?
Oh, you mean sort of like in more day-to-day leadership roles, folks that put a lot of stock into this kind of stuff?
Yeah, a principal at a school, or an owner operator of a local store, or the CEO of a company.
Well, who's to say they're not into it privately? But our culture definitely, in those types of roles, it would not be something that folks would maybe make super known, right?
Especially in a increasingly secular Western civilization. There are largely dismissive scientific attitudes toward belief systems of astrology, so it's easy to that point to assume our vaunted leaders of modern society, our nascent nations, would be likewise dismissive of these ideas, right? The science says hello, so we say goodbye to the religion. However, as we learn in our earlier episode and the current episode, this assumption could not be further from the truth. Here's where it gets crazy. Astrology, the White House. What's your sign, Mr. President? Statistically, you're a dude, and statistically, you're also an Aquarius. Weird. You also have a tendency higher than average to be left-handed. We're going to leave that there. Tune in to Ridiculous History. It is no secret that the founding fathers of the United States considered themselves learned men. They had a deep appreciation of science as they understood it at the time. Also, to be objective, beat me here, Andrew, they were super wrong about a bunch of shit.
Yeah, and you can imagine why someone who's running such an intricate and complicated system as a country, you would want to be science first, at least in some respect. You want to have an understanding of the sciences that govern a lot of the stuff, the choices you're making, right? It does seem weird that you might consult something that is the stars to make decisions.
Does it though? Because the stars are constant. You can, we referenced Fievel earlier, right?
Yeah.
You can
it's a shared
look
experience
up,
for sure.
Right. You can look up and you can see the same thing, pauper prince alike. There is a passage predictable to the heavens.
Well, and the beautiful part about that in terms of what a functional, use of the stars might be to this day, it's still a way you can find your literal North Star if you're lost in the woods and you can get pointed in the right direction. And I think that's universally accepted as a way of using the stars for navigation purposes, for example, even though, of course, we have, technology for that kind of stuff now, it's still a good go-to if you don't have those things. But when you start to impart meaning beyond just geographical positioning, into the stars, it does start to feel like that is maybe looked at more askance these days.
I think it's because we're so programmed and primed to imagine the president of the United States as consulting God, right? Even though it is a secular nation, right? There is no one God and there is no one religion for this nation. We still watch each president who gets inaugurated put their hand on a Christian Bible, right? We still hear them give speeches and announcements where they reference God directly, and we sing songs about the nation directly tied to G-D. And it's just... then you imagine astrology as something othered from I don't know, some of the dogmatic beliefs of those religions.
I don't know if I even buy that a lot of politicians that are very forward with that kind of stuff are maybe even true believers. It seems like they're just trying to appeal to a particular voting base.
Yeah.
Most of the time. And the astrology maybe would be on the table too if it were practiced and accepted by a larger swath of Americans.
That's so Leo of you to say.
Thank you. You know what I mean? I mean, from a standpoint of just like rhetoric and like campaigning and stuff, I think any belief system that was used and accepted and believed in widely enough would be something that would have to be addressed, by politicians to make sure that they're not alienating people and they're making people feel seen, if not outright claiming that belief system for themselves.
Look, great case study here, and I don't want to ruffle feathers, would be the LDS Church in Utah. You know what I mean? That is a case study in how a politician will attempt to move with a demographic in public democracy, representative democracy. It's crucial to remember when we're talking about the founding fathers, their perceptions of science were very much the result of the environment and the age in which they lived. So a lot of the stuff that they super hardcore fundamentally believed in, no matter what they were saying to the public, a lot of what they considered hard science was later proven to be partially or entirely incorrect. Some notable examples in this hall of shame or this hall of learning opportunities, if we want to be positive, would be anything regarding eugenics or racial theory. A lot of phrenology fans amid the founding fathers. Super wrong and dumb.
Yeah. And a lot of members of the Free and Accepted Masons, right? Which have, that group has their own set of symbols and set of beliefs and ideas. And
some
a lot
of which
of them
have made it into currency even, I mean,
shout out my boy Hermes T. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, some of them extend to the stars.
Exactly.
Yeah, very much. A great architect. All human minds, we can say, do enjoy the idea of a great creator, right? Some sort of structure, some sort of guiding force, because the alternative is simply damning philosophically that no one would be at the wheel, that all of this occurred via accident. That's a scary thought. So, of course, people look toward pattern, people look toward meaning with all this in mind. It should not be surprising to realize many former U.S. politicians placed at least some amount of credence in the ancient science/spiritual exploration of divination and astrology. You guys, true story, our buddy Benjamin Franklin, you remember him from earlier, definitely not a serial killer.
Yeah, most likely. Yeah, just
most likely
some experiments. Yeah,
good note, Noel. Not proven serial killer. He relied on astrology to select the signing date of the Declaration of Independence, which was it's a piece of paper the U.S. has and was a pretty big deal up until recently.
Because now we're dependent. Oh, never mind. Okay. The recent actions are well in line with our actions. Did anybody see that little quotation?
Every action begets an equal and opposite reaction. No, I don't
it sure does.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, do a little search.
Shout out Article 5. Oh my gosh.
Oh boy.
Oh, buddy. I mean, look, our buddy Ben, despite not being a proven serial killer, check out our earlier episode, he's a fascinating, sort of weird dude. He adhered to astrology. And it might sound crazy until we realize that he published a best-selling book, Poor Richard's Almanac. Remember that one? Were you guys there?
Was I there? I was there. Yeah, at the first Cannes show. Sorry if I'm doing a losing my edge thing. No, but I've heard tell.
Heard tell. Poor Richard's Almanac is this approachable sort of like Uncle John's Bathroom Guide to the seasons of the United States. And it follows in great deal, the passage of harvest and planting and fallow times. And then it also tells you a lot about the North Star and predictions of the heavens. Ben Franklin, in addition to being a pretty naughty boy and a libertine and a Renaissance man, he was super into astrology. He thought it made sense, and he even disses Isaac Newton from earlier in Poor Richard's Almanac. Can we go to who's got a good Ben Franklin voice? I'm too close to it.
No, come on, you've got to do it.
You got it. You got to do it.
Franklin.
No, you got to do it. You got to. One of you guys.
I refuse. Maddie, you're the voice master. Come on, give it to us.
Here we go.
All right, this is Poor Richard's Almanac, Ben Franklin's defense of astrology.
Courteous reader, astrology is one of the most ancient sciences, held in high esteem of old by the wise and great. Formerly no prince would make war or peace, nor any general fight or battle. In short, no important affair was taken without first consulting an astrologer, who examined the aspects and configurations of the heavenly bodies and marked the lucky hour. Now, the noble art, more shame to the age we live in, is dwindled into contempt.
Perfect. Wow, that was great.
Well done, sir.
Yeah, now let's unpack this. What we're seeing here is a founding father, Ben Franklin, presented by our brother Matt Frederick, saying essentially that he considers astrology one of the oldest actual sciences, actual fact science, as our pal Lauren would say. And he is also acknowledging that a lot of more secular people don't vibe with it.
Not a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But Benjamin Franklin, this guy's massively important. He started the CIA. Just kidding. He was just a founding member, as we talked about very recently.
He was in the room. He was there. He was definitely there, guys.
He was middle management on some operations.
He was a muse for the CIA.
Sure. Yeah, right.
But he didn't run the place, right? He was just he was on the sidelines, whispering into people's ears.
All right. We're all having fun with Ben. That's right. He did a lot of stuff. And he also is clearly a fan of astrology, and he continues on. If you want to read more of his work on the almanac, he continues to talk about how he feels the, as you would say, in the modern world has lost its way when it comes to ancient science. And he factored in the passage of heavenly bodies when he was choosing times for policy to be signed, up to and including the Declaration of Independence. We're not saying he's right. We're not saying he genuinely believed it. We are saying he's kind of the first internet troll in America.
100%.
Amazing.
And with this, we are attempting to prove the case that the U.S. government has always held a somewhat secret affinity for astrology. We hope that you will join us after the ad break. We're diving into even weirder stuff. Shout out to Ben Franklin. I'm so scared of that guy. You know, he took air baths.
Yeah. That means he was a bit of a nudist. We'll be right back.
And we've returned. Before we get to the present day, or the more presenter day, we're gonna share a couple stories about other founding fathers or other heads of U.S. state who were involved with astrology, often by proxy.
Oh yeah. Hey, let's jump to a president that everybody remembers. President Franklin Pierce.
Boo.
Did that ring all the bells? No? No? President Pierce was in office from March 4th, 1853 until March 4th, 1857. A very exciting time in the United States that we all remember. But the reason why we're going to talk about Franklin Pierce is because when we're talking about astrology, there's a loose connection, and I say that, a very loose connection to other parts of spiritualism that we've discussed on this show before. The concept that there is some kind of veil between us and the experience we have on this planet and some other worldly plane, some spiritual plane, whether that is even the heavens, because it could extend to the heavens itself, or maybe it's just between life and death and things like that. We're bringing up Franklin Pierce because his time in office was specifically marked by some of the beliefs and actions of his spouse, Jane Pierce. And the two of them together, while in the White House, attempted to do things like contact dead loved ones. So like actually having seances inside the White House walls, which to me, guys, feels like something that just doesn't happen unless you're in some kind of, conspiracy movie or some movie about, I don't know. It's just a seance in the White House feels so wrong to me. And I think it's because of how I've been programmed over the years. Yes, it seems like a wrong thing. You don't have a seance in the White House. Yeah, it's unheard of. It's uncouth. And maybe it's just because the White House feels like a country club to me or something where just only super wealthy people are allowed to go into, and I don't know, no, you guys don't like anything I'm saying here.
What are you talking about? No, but that's true. But also we know about a lot of these kind of clandestine gatherings and, secret organizations, Book and Snake and all of that, where the members, publicly are very often evangelical, at the very least, like good Christian, patriotic Americans. But behind closed doors, all kinds of stuff is on the table. And I don't know. I've just always,
Yeah, we got your back, man. Also, Noel, Matt and I have been to the White House together. It's a very weird place.
It's super weird. Washington, D.C. is super weird. I just remember the first time I went there, some people who are, likely not psychologically well and are unhoused, etc. They have a very different vibe there than they do in other parts of the country. The kinds of things that they're, screaming from the street corners, very conspiratorial, and there's just a certain energy there that is very different than anywhere else I've ever been to.
And before we continue here, let's set the stage. Let's get in front of the emails. Franklin Pierce is often regarded as one of the not best U.S. presidents. And I think enough time has passed that historians have done their bit. We can point out that folks like Teddy Roosevelt said mean things about former POTUS Pierce. He said specifically, quote, Franklin Pierce is a servile tool of men worse than himself, ever ready to do any work the, slavery leaders set him. So this guy, like you're saying, Matt, he's not president for a very long time. He is also very much a product of his time. We're talking about the spiritualism movement. We're talking about the idea of science addressing that great Gnostic veil that you're talking about, right?
Yeah, exactly. And just to give a minor backstory here, Franklin Pierce and his wife Jane were on a boxcar. They had their 11-year-old son. I think he was 11 at the time. They had their young son with them at the time. The boxcar overturned and the son was crushed, essentially, horrifically. Both parents witnessed this and saw this. And they, Jane, this is like right before the inauguration, pretty soon before the inauguration. Yeah. And then once they got to the White House, they made attempts. I mean, they're at the seat of power. If there is a way to contact your dead loved one, perhaps being in that place, maybe there's power to that, right? Depending on your beliefs, maybe there's power to holding that position in general. There were numerous attempts made to contact this dead child, through various means and methods. And I think maybe just, it's not something that I imagined would have ever happened.
Matt, was there a sense that you got in looking into this that maybe this type of thing was seen as something that women would be more interested in, and that maybe the mother, this is something that she wanted, but perhaps she was maybe being kind of allowed to do it by her husband? I'm sorry. I know that there were men that were interested in this stuff too. I'm just wondering if the historical context is something to talk about, because I guess I think of many of the folks, the practitioners of seances, historically being women.
Well, I can't really speak to that. I mean, there's lots you could get into with, think about historical depictions and thoughts on witchcraft,
Exactly.
right? And
That's
way
kinda
back, and all
Sure.
that stuff getting lumped
Oracle
together.
of Delphi and so on.
Yeah, you just go
Right.
way back, and
Society always seeks to shit on women.
yeah, precisely. In this case, you're also talking about the historical context of the Fox sisters, who were alive, who actually visited the White House to attempt to contact Jane's dead loved ones. So,
To attempt to look like they were attempting to contact.
I think, yes, that is correct, Ben. But in the case of Jane, right, if you go to her personal perspective,
Sure.
she believes that potentially they can, right?
Right.
So that's all occurring. And, you can get into other presidents and spouses as well. Mary Lincoln did the same kinds of spiritualism things, like seances, to contact her dead children.
And y'all, my comment about this being maybe something that women were more interested in, certainly not meant to be dismissive in any way or gendering anything. I think I wanted just to take a minute to talk about exactly what you guys mentioned, which was the context and the maybe gender roles and politics of the time.
Well, I would, to that agreed, I would also call our collective attention to our previous episode on the Screaming Girls of Malaysia, right? Remember that one? Yep. Look, I'm going in a million directions here. It's amazing that I've never tried Adderall. Can you guys imagine how insufferable I would be?
You'd be like the Tasmanian devil, Ben.
Jeez.
You would
Bring it back.
Taking it back.
Save us.
Taking it back to the White House and Mary Lincoln there.
Yeah.
Because there's a specific room in the White House called the Red Room,
Yeah.
which already freaks me out. Sounds like a place where you either get murdered or murder.
It's a weird name. It's a weird name.
It was the Red Room as it was red and has been designed red by various interior designers over the years and redesigned and redesigned. I'm going to share an image with you guys that I found on the White House website of the Red Room of a particular time when it was redone. And if you look at this image that I just sent, it feels like an astrology room. It's got stars all along the ceiling. The way the red is laid out in that room, it feels as though you would go there and consult the stars.
Sure.
This was a redesign after the time of Mary Lincoln, when she's in the White House as First Lady, after the time of Pierce, obviously. But
this table in the middle, Matt, would have been sort of where this seance would have been conducted.
No, you could set the whole room up with the tables and chairs however you want. It's just because, again, this is a redesign after those seances were occurring.
Got it.
But that's just to show the White House is a place where this kind of stuff can happen and has happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But much more recently than that, right, Ben? This is the part of the episode that really blew my mind. Like, this era that you're talking about, Matt, it all makes sense. This stuff was trendy even, right? And it would make sense that this would be employed. But I would have thought this would have gone out the window in more modern times. Not the case.
Out the Red Room window. Oh, my gosh. This is the one we were teasing as well. Like, we have built a pretty solid case that astrology, divination, has always existed low-key as a part of U.S. policy. Cast your memory back, and not to date anyone, too far, but some of us in the audience tonight might remember a fairly famous actor named Ronald Reagan, who is also, sort of famous for a couple of other things, right?
The decline of Western civilization.
Oh, it's trickling down. Horse and sparrow. Yeah. Look, we can learn about dictators a world away, and we can immediately exoticize, or as you guys were saying, other their actions. Surely not us. Obviously, we in America have our priorities straight. Horoscopes are fun, but science guides our civilization. I got increasingly Texas on that one, and I'm sorry, guys.
It's okay. Science or God, and or both, and or, it's just, they're really closely linked.
Okay, so while it is still legal for us to talk about this on air, please remember, folks, the U.S. White House very recently was influenced by astrology. The Ronald Reagan administration had some stuff to deal with, and it gets a little confusing because one of our primary sources for this is a former chief of staff for Ronald Reagan, and his name is Don Reagan, Regan. So Reagan, nominative determinism. I kind of think that's why he got the job.
And there's a series of, I think, 3, maybe even 4 books that go over everything we're going to be talking about from this moment forward, where it's like the different perspectives of all the people involved. And I think Dawn has one of them. I think. Okay.
Yeah. Dawn has a memoir called For the Record, From Wall Street to the White House. Here's how he depicts the interaction of astrology with the Reagan administration. Now, Matt, you did an excellent job with Ben Franklin. I suggest, or I vote, that we go to none other than Noel the Bagman Brown for a dramatic recreation of Don Regan.
A recreational recreation. I'm going to do my best, Ben, to do my duty to God and my country, to impersonate Don Regan. And this is what he writes in For the Record, his memoir, as you said, Ben. Virtually every major move and decision the Reagans made during my time as White House Chief of Staff was cleared in advance with this woman in San Francisco who drew up horoscopes to make certain that the planets were in a favorable alignment for the Enterprise. Like the not the Starship Enterprise, the Enterprise of what? The thing they were doing, right?
Amazing. Andrew, let's make sure we have applause cues.
I went all over the place with that one.
It was great.
You know what I got from that? A little New York City.
Well, that's my guy, man. That's my guy. There's no one better to copy than Matt Berry. No,
Yeah, man.
You got to like shake your jowls with it, man.
I like how San Francisco was 5 very angry syllables.
It was amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. Also, our guy Don goes on to say he is required by the president and the first lady to keep a color-coded calendar on his desk. Like if you've ever seen a desk calendar, God, I'm dating myself here. He had these little like Post-its essentially and highlighter things where good days astrologically were highlighted in green and bad days were highlighted in red. If we go to Jessica Weisberg writing an excellent, relatively short article for the Paris Review in June of 2018, we can actually see the way this calendar is mapped out.
From January 16th to the 23rd, very bad. January 20th, nothing outside the White House. Possible attempt.
Hey, point of order, Matt. I believe that just says nothing outside the WH.
Oh,
so
you're right.
It could have been Waffle House.
Yeah, it's true.
We just don't know. We don't know.
Yeah, but
Lost
then
to history.
stuff goes down inside the Waffle House all the time, so you've got to be careful. Inside, outside, who knows? February 20th through the 26th, be careful. March 7th through the 14th, bad period.
Okay.
March 10th through 14th, no outside activity. March 16th, very bad.
What is this outside activity you're referring to? It's the second time we've seen that. We had nothing outside the Waffle House, and now no outside activity.
It's referring to President Reagan's movements, Where
Right.
can he go?
I see.
Because remember, there was an attempt on his life,
Absolutely.
right?
Yes. Yep.
And that is one of the things that pushed all of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Hinckley situation.
It was real hinky. That Hinckley
It
situation.
was real Hinckley. This list goes on, and you will notice, astute conspiracy realist, that there's never any note of a positive day in this calendar. You know what I mean?
It's
You
the
need
opposite of
you need an attaboy
of newspaper horoscopes.
Yeah,
right? All doom and gloom.
March 10th to 14th, no outside activity. March 16th, very bad. March 15th, the Ides of March, by the way. Why is that not a good day? Or did they just skip that part?
Who knows? I can't remember if there's tarot reading and other specific divination things occurring here, or if it is just an astrological chart that's being interpreted by somebody.
Yeah.
I can't remember in all of the reporting. There is so much written about this, you guys, that at least I personally had no idea it existed out there.
Yeah. And in that kind of experience or surprise, our buddy Don Reagan he's super irritated, right? Like, he's the chief of staff. That is a very stressful job. And he's asking himself continually, why can this one individual who has never been elected, why can they hold such influence over the day-to-day actions of the most dangerous human being alive? Spoiler, the most dangerous human being alive is, in recent history, always going to be the U.S. president.
This is very prescient, Ben, the question that you just asked. It seems like we're going through something a little bit similar right now. Weird.
So the most dangerous human being on planet Earth is not like the dictators, the generals, the junta runners of Myanmar. They have a rotating staff of fortune tellers. They have like a think tank of people who tell you good and bad days. Check out our earlier episode. In this case, the White House has just one astrologer, a little bit off the books, a little bit on the books. We're going to pause for a word from our sponsor, and we're going to tell you about this person from, Noel, can you say San Francisco again in the voice?
San Francisco.
Her name is Joan Quigley. We've returned. Let's meet Joan Quigley. Joan Quigley is from, Noel, just one more time. I'm sorry.
San Francisco.
I love it. I love it. All right. Joan Quigley is the closest you can get to old money out west, out in San Francisco. The Quigley family, they own a lot of hotels. We're telling you this not to judge the person, just to let you know she's not hard up for money. She is a San Franciscan socialite, and she is not directly connected to Ronald Reagan, who will later become U.S. president for a time. Instead, she's connected to a lady named Nancy Reagan, who later becomes the first lady. And we're gonna cut that parenthetical about her sexual exploits. Let's keep that off.
Wait, Nancy's or Jones?
Nancy.
Okay. Wait, Nancy?
Yeah.
Oh.
All right.
I really thought it was going to be Jones.
We're keeping it in. All right, fine. So, do you guys remember Merv Griffin? Why do I sound so old?
Yeah, I was
in
there.
This episode. You were there?
I'm aware of the name, and I don't know why I have Salacious in my mind when I think of Merv Griffin, but maybe it was just more of a talk show in the 70s?
Yeah, it was a very popular talk show. No, it was earlier in the 70s, wasn't it?
He was around for a while. He
Yeah,
was
okay.
played
Old
for a
school
minute.
guy.
Yeah. He did have a talk show. He had a number of like TV hosting things, and in the early 70s, 1970s, he introduces Nancy Reagan and Joan Quigley. And when he introduces them, Nancy Reagan and Ronald Reagan are still like very much Hollywood exploring, the political scene. And Quigley is a frequent guest on Merv Griffin's talk show. So she, as a Republican, volunteers to sort of lend her astrological expertise to the Reagan campaigns. He had an unsuccessful foray, as we remember, in 1976 toward the presidency. She said, Joan Quigley said she knew it wouldn't work out. She saw it in the stars. And then later, of course, he becomes president, and people start calling him the Gipper.
Yeah, win one for the Gipper, because he was in a baseball-related film, the name of which is escaping me, and he's, spoiler alert, I guess, on his deathbed, and someone's speaking to him, and he says, win one for the Gipper.
That's where it comes from?
Yeah,
That's the etymology?
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, thank you, dude.
Yeah, it's when he was an actor, yes.
Yeah, all right. So early on, the Gipper catches some guff from political opponents and from the media because people are saying he's consulting astrologers. This is very much not 1980s Republican America, right? You're supposed to be on Wall Street. You're supposed to be like doing their type of Black Monday murders kind of divination, right? You're reading stocks and trades and doing, futures.
Yeah, but if you're reading those stocks and trades, there's a little section in the same publication that has your daily horoscope. And sometimes your eyes just glance past it and you may take a thing or two into account.
Yeah, I was drifting. I was looking at NASDAQ, and then I saw some Taurus. I don't know if that works.
Some Fords?
Some Fords? A gaggle of them?
Yours?
A herd?
Ford Tauruses? Is that what we're talking about?
Oh, geez. Long as it's not a Honda Odyssey.
Which I respectfully did not purchase out of respect for you, Ben.
I appreciate that. Thank you for your service, Noel.
Of course. No, you're welcome. I'm here for it. And by the way, the character that he's playing in that film is Notre Dame football player George Gipp. And he is at his deathbed speaking to the kind of, I think, one of the main characters in the film, Knut Rockne. And he requests that he win one for the Gipper. Just one, he says.
Can you spell Knut for the gang?
Knute. And the film is called Knut Rockne, All-American, from the year 1940.
That's the name of the film?
Yep. Knut Rockne, All-American, 1940. Maybe it's the K is silent, but I like it. I like Knut better.
It was a different time.
Really
Jeez.
was.
Well, as you were saying earlier there, Matt, in 1980, our buddy the Gipper publicly mentions that he checks out his daily horoscope. And he's not being, a demagogue about it. He's not telling everybody else that they have to check their horoscopes. He essentially says what you said earlier, I read the paper. Sometimes I pass through a column, and I'm like, hey, what's up with me?
Yeah. And then the Federation of American Scientists chimes in. He goes, oh, really? Well, how about this?
They were so pissed. They were so pissed off. They wrote a letter to the White House, open letter, clear PR, character assassination thing. And they said, in our opinion, no person whose decisions are based even in part on such evident fantasies can be trusted to make the many serious, and even life and death, decisions required of American presidents.
Steeper fingers and a silly laugh.
Well,
yeah, they actually wrote out hee hee ha ha ho ho.
They really did. Hey, you got to take into account the weight of that position. And, we've talked before about that nuclear football situation that the president has, those nukes at hand at all times. you don't want that person making decisions based on anything but the best intelligence available, right?
Which, that's a great point, because, okay, as dumb as it sounds, picture this being one day away, one horoscope column away from nuclear disaster. That is the criticism and the concern levied by the Federation of American Scientists. They're saying, what if the Gipper, right? God bless, inshallah, whatever. What if the Gipper picks up the wrong column of the wrong newspaper and reads something that says Russia is coming after you?
Well, isn't that a little hyperbolic? I mean,
it's super hyperbolic.
Right.
You are correct.
He was just kind of, using it as a way to, I don't know, man, like the way certain baseball players don't ever change their socks,
Dude, I am so caught up on like Baldur's Gate 3 lore and Skyrim lore that it doesn't inform my actions in the real world.
100%. But it also, like, you bring it up often. It clearly is on your mind. And it can't not have some effect on the way you think about the world. And I'm just using that as an example, but I don't know that to be true for you in particular. But I think, much like a Bible passage or any kind of aphorism, you can glean what you want from these kind of small little pieces of writing. And if it's something that works for you and it feels like it's guiding your path in a positive way, then by all means, right? But I certainly don't think he was going to be compelled to push the nuclear button by a horoscope.
Again, hyperbolic.
Oh, yeah, no, we're on the same page.
Agreed. But let's really paint the picture here. That's 1980. Ronald Reagan states that publicly. We already know that his spouse has direct connections to this Joan Quigley person. Mm-hmm. Now, in 1981, the attempt on Ronald Reagan's life is made. Mm-hmm. Now, all of that coincides, and the First Lady reaches out directly to Joan Quigley and says, hey, we've got some stuff going on. Is there any way you can come on in some kind of, official capacity to help us figure things out up here and protect the president?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can we seek any potential hedge against a possible disaster? Right. Yeah. Specifically, and this is referenced in multiple books that don't always agree on their narratives. Specifically, the conversation goes, the First Lady asked Quigley, could you have told us about the assassination attempt? And Joan Quigley, by the way, with the benefit of retrospect, says, yeah, I could have.
But it's like, is it that much different than, the Russell Targ situation, or like the idea of CIA using remote viewing as a way of solving crimes or finding hostages or what have you? I mean, it's sort of like whatever works, in a pinch, right? I don't know. It seems very aligned with that. And I guess it's all about who's in charge as to who sanctions this kind of stuff and then gives it air.
Yes, beautiful. Let us also consider sort of the 3-card monte of information management, right? Do we have radar? No. People just eat carrots. That is the milieu in which this story occurs. So I would also add a little bit off the books, just between us and everyone listening and the NSA and Five Eyes. I would just add that at this time, big data aggregation and prognostication is already occurring. We're in the 1980s. We are very, very deeply invested in the idea of leveraging numbers to predict patterns. So there may be a little bit of embellishment to hide actual technology here. I don't think Quigley nor the First Lady Reagan are aware of this. It does sound, by all accounts, it does sound like the First Lady in particular is quite traumatized by Hinckley almost killing her husband. Like, picture the person you love most in the world. Picture that person almost dying. What would you do to make sure they don't die? It's a fair question. I'm sorry I raised my voice.
No, it's okay. It's okay. You startled me, though.
But so the situation they find themselves in, and this is, again, The perspective changes a little bit depending on whose memoir you're reading. You can read the memoirs of Don Regan. You can read the same types of stories written by Nancy Reagan, right? Her perspective from the whole thing. You can read, memoirs about Ronald Reagan and what it states in there and how it's kind of downplayed a little bit. Or you can read Joan Quigley's memoir because she wrote one about her perspective too. But what we do find is that on a literal daily basis, the First Lady, Nancy Reagan, is in communication with Joan Quigley about the movements, the meetings, the places, the flights, everything that Ronald Reagan is going to take. But Joan Quigley is not in direct communication with President Reagan.
Yeah.
It's almost like it is like those advisors, right? You've got a series of advisors. They're in the background doing all this work and planning, and then it ends up getting to the president on this is where you need to go. And sometimes even this group of advisors would make cancellations on major events and meetings that were supposed to occur because of whatever astrological reading that Joan Quigley was getting.
Right. Which again, the president, well, depending on the narrative, the president would say at this time that they did not know, right? Like, I'm not in charge of the schedule. I got people for that, It's plausible deniability, right? Because you don't want to look like you are practicing magic, especially in the environment in which this occurs. And you're absolutely correct. Quigley often stresses, I don't know, her story changes back and forth, but she often stresses that she herself was not directly connected with the POTUS, which reminds me a little bit of Iran-Contra, but that's a different story. Instead, she says, you guys like how I walked down the street for that one? Just a tag Iran-Contra real quick. Instead, Quigley says that she delved into the astrological reading of President Ronald Reagan, and then she would consult, as we mentioned, on a semi-professional basis, paid position with the First Lady, Nancy Reagan, and then Nancy Reagan would be the one who, through a proxy, modified the schedule to function in accordance with the stars. Sounds weird, is true.
It sounds super, super weird. Gosh, man, I keep thinking about the quotes that I've seen from Joan. Some of it's from her memoir. Some of it's from like People magazine. Some of it's from other places. You can see where she almost boasts about it in a couple of places.
Right.
But then also super downplays it in other places.
Yeah. She's talking with People magazine in the late 1990s, and she says, look, there are summits that are arranged by the State Department and Reagan and some of his staff. And she says, I had nothing to do with the scheduling. I think people are overemphasizing my role. However, when Don Regan's book goes into the public eye, he calls it, let's see, Noel, you did the Reagan voice earlier. Can you bless us with some of the invections from our buddy Don Regan?
Of course I can. I don't know if I can do it the same. It's sort of a crapshoot. We'll see. The most closely guarded domestic secret of the Reagan White House. Every major move and decisions the Reagans made during my time as the White House Chief of Staff was cleared and advanced with a woman in San Francisco who drew up horoscopes to make certain that the planets were in a favorable alignment of the Enterprise.
And remember, that quote comes from his book in 1988. Now, and the quote we just read from Joan is almost 10 years later after all this has happened. And her memoir, kind of going against the stuff that Don originally said in his book from 1988, came out in 1990. So it was this whole like Merv Griffin show of a series of books.
More right? Like a Merv Griffin shit show, am I right?
That was really good. Yeah, I like that. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. Media insiders already knew well the ties between astrology and Hollywood, we're saying Hollywood is sort of a metonymy for the U.S. entertainment industry, right? It's big soft power diplomacy. And way before the Gipper ever became the most dangerous human being on the planet, he and his spouse, like anybody else who was cool in Los Angeles, they openly consulted with astrologers. They probably did yoga, stuff like that, like the cool celebrity thing. And they also spoke with folks like Carol Reiter, Rigchter, the most famous astrologer for the stars. That's a redundant phrase.
To the stars, what they would have said in old Hollywood.
Yes, the astrologer for the stars, to the stars. What a weird language. Anyway, this guy is nationally syndicated. He's the one that you're hanging out with all the time. Sort of how like people who are celebrities will go speak with our coworker Jay Shetty, right? Or they'll talk with Deepak Chopra or the Dalai Lama.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, people love those guys.
It was just fashionable for Hollywood celebrities to shout out their astrologers.
Well, and now, like, especially maybe definitely still in Hollywood, but I thought it was very well parodied, I guess, in the TV show Silicon Valley. The idea of mega high level executives, to the kind of point of this conversation in a way, maybe things are shifting. The Gavin Belson character, who is the CEO of Hooli or whatever it was called, I think that was what it was, sort of a Google-esque Facebook kind of hybrid. He had a guru that was always around and was giving him, business advice. I think that's parody kind of based on reality.
Oh, yeah. Spiritual advisors are a thing and have been a thing always. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Matt, can I ask, or Noel and Matt,
of course, and
you listening at home, can I get a spiritual advisor? You guys know I don't really have
just go on TaskRabbit. You'll find somebody.
My TaskRabbit guru. Drop the beat. This sounds like something we could rap about.
Well, a shaman is a really popular thing right now. To have 100%. A shaman.
To have a shaman.
Like on retainer.
Yeah.
Like seriously.
All right. Cool. We're going to follow up on that one.
Yeah. If they don't make you sit beneath a golden pyramid for a lengthy period of time, they're not worth your money.
Also
true. Oh, you know Derek?
Yeah, I
do. So we see the narrative bifurcate. Right? Divide. We were talking about this earlier and foreshadowing it. During her career, both in and out of Washington, D.C., the First Lady consistently portrays her interest in astrology as sort of a harmless hobby, a matter of personal fascination, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In fact, Joan Quigley maintains that she preferred secrecy, to be out of the public eye. And as a self-proclaimed patriot and a friend to the First Lady, she didn't really go out for, notoriety. She wasn't seeking the limelight. She sort of shied away from public attention for these consultations. So she claimed.
Yeah. Mm. If you go back to the 1800s as well, there is a tradition of spiritual advisors like this, who tend towards the spiritualism side, to be let into the White House on a frequent basis, to be an important part of, daily life and some of the decisions about scheduling. But those human beings, those individuals, would often be let in through the south entrance, or through the east wing or the west wing, a specific place where you can get past security and you don't have to sign the logbook in the same way if you're ushered in with somebody. Right. It's interesting that it's been kept such a secretive thing over the course of, 100-something years.
Well, and Joan didn't take kindly to maybe the revisionist history of the way she was talked about after the fact, when this relationship kind of became a little more known to the public and especially to biographers, etc.
Yeah, again, she does not need money. She does not need financial support. This is a personal blow. The statements of the First Lady, former First Lady at this point, they sour the relationship between Quigley and Reagan. And it sounds like she was hoping, Quigley, was hoping for some sort of public acknowledgement.
Validation even.
Right, yeah, that's a good word for it.
This might mainstream something that she was very passionate about and believed in very deeply.
Here's what pissed Quigley off. In 1989, Nancy Reagan has her memoir, My Turn. Good name, honestly.
Well, it's a direct response to For the Record, right? From Don.
Right. And that's why it's a good name. And so Nancy Reagan says, astrology was simply one of the ways I coped with the fear I felt after my husband almost died. Understandable. She continues, my relationship with Joan, that being Joan Quigley, the astrologer, began as a crutch, one of several ways I tried to alleviate my concern about Ronnie.
Just a passing fancy.
Right. A harmless hobby. Joan Quigley, you guys, is super pissed off. She is offended. She is like, imagine that you have ever encountered some sort of human interaction where you think you're deeper in a friendship than your partner does.
Well, righteously indignant, perhaps, because she believed that this relationship was based on a mutual admiration and respect. And she goes on in her own memoir, What Does Joan Say, in 1990, to describe just that and how this was not just a relationship between her and the First Lady. It was very much a relationship between her and the president, who would, again, according to her, this is a bit of a she said, he said memoir off, but she did claim that she was very frequently consulted by the president. That's where the title comes from, because the president would, according to her, ask, what does Joan say, in terms of when a call would be scheduled or whether to take a meeting or not.
Well, yeah, and that is President Reagan speaking to his spouse, right? That is not President Reagan calling Joan and saying, hey, what's going on?
But still, he's putting credence in this stuff. Exactly. It's almost like he believes it more than, just as much, if not maybe more than the First Lady.
Yeah, and Quigley says this is where Quigley's story changes. She argues, despite her earlier statements downplaying her role, she argues that she did assist with mission-critical trade negotiations. She made sure that public addresses went well. She helped save the president's life. That is the argument. Make no mistake. And she also says that she saw the betrayal coming. In later statements, she writes, struggle has been in my charts. I expect no gratitude from the Reagans. And it's her duty as an astrologer and an American patriot to hold the course, right? To stay steady, but it still doesn't lessen the pain of the betrayal. I have to ask, what do you guys think?
Wow.
You know, do you think an astrologer saved Reagan?
I don't know, man. I just think that whenever it comes to memoirs, there's a lot of revisionist history on all sides, you know, and the fact that Quigley sort of course corrected, you know, after the fact and sort of wanted to claim more credit than she ever had wanted to, you know, in the first place. It just makes it not quite ring true, but I don't know. It's hard.
Yeah. Can you, real quick question, Noel, can you make sure to describe Matt and myself as sexual dynamos?
Of course.
When you write your
memoirs?
I
always do.
Yeah.
Just
talk about our cheekbones.
Regular comedy. You're very handsome, boys, and I always say that to anyone who will have me. And it's definitely going in the memoir.
Imagine being in that position, though. There are two huge selling memoirs that come out where you are talked
it's
about.
A memoir.
You were like you were raw dogged, like you were drugged on that one.
Driggin', that's a word.
Yeah, it is. You're onto something there, Matt.
Yeah, getting regged around in these old memoirs. It's a weird situation. It's very strange, and it does make me wonder just how little we know about other spiritual advisors that have held, you know, some kind of place in the upper echelons of the White House, or maybe even in the Senate, right? Where it's just, who else has this elected official's ear that has a lot of influence on them that may be coming from, no matter what religion, it does make me wonder, like, what Obama's get at us. Who were your spiritual advisors?
Well, and I mean, you know, it's also, I think it begs the question of just in general, like how a non-elected person hanging around, whispering in ears is inherently a little problematic. And I was, being a little coy earlier, just talking about the Elon Musk situation. He's not a scientist. He's not an expert in his field. He's not even necessarily a programmer. I mean, he's got this gang of young upstarts that do all that stuff for him.
Shout out big balls.
Big balls. But what I'm saying is, like, what makes him any different than a spiritual advisor in the capacity that he's acting right now?
Yeah.
Well, is AI a religion, guys?
Well, we certainly could get there. I just mean, can you imagine? It seems like the kind of thing you'd see in a video game where it's like, the cults that would emerge around worshiping, artificial intelligence.
People, look, I've known a lot of people, not to flex, they'll worship anything.
More than 7 people.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
yes.
No, they will worship. But I mean, the idea, can you, especially with things like the basilisk experiment, not to get too off course here, but just the idea of maybe being deferential to our potential future artificial intelligence / robot overlords. I could definitely see that kind of thing.
I can't even discuss this because I feel like the term artificial intelligence is inherently philosophically fraudulent.
Of course it is. But I'm just saying, I agree with you that it could very well fill that kind of religious space. I know we were going off course a little bit.
This
but
is
I do
perfect.
think that's very interesting.
This is perfect. We don't have time to get into it tonight, but I sent us in our research for this, I sent us my unethical theory on how we could possibly prove the existence or scientific basis, if such exist, for astrology. Spoiler, we're not going to do it on air, because it is a step-by-step, pretty unclean thing to figuring out the answer. And I sent it to you guys. We can talk about it offline. What we're looking at now is the following. Have these conversations with unelected astrological experts. Have they reached, true results? Like, how do we measure that? Is there something to the story? The choice really depends on your perspective. And like everybody else listening, we're an audience of the stars that were here before you got here and are going to be around after you're gone. Not to be a bummer about it, but it's one of the constant things humans can look at as they attempt to glean meaning out there in the ink. So the question is there something astrology can teach the humans? And if so, what? We'd love to hear from you before we get into too much trouble.
We do try to make it easy for you to find us all over the internet, on your social media platform of choice, if you wish. You can find us at the handle Conspiracy Stuff. We exist on X, FKA, Twitter, on YouTube, where we have video content for your enjoyment, as well as on Facebook. We have our Facebook group, Here's Where It Gets Crazy, on Instagram and TikTok. We are Conspiracy Stuff Show.
We also have a phone number. That number is 1-833-STDWYTK. Call in and tell us why you think it is that all 4 human beings on this recording session right now are Leos. How did that happen? What stars aligned? What do you think? Give yourself a cool nickname and let us know in the message if we can use your name and message on the air. If you got more to say than can fit in a 3-minute voicemail, why not instead send us a good old-fashioned email? We are
0110-001-100110.
Praise!
Conspiracy@iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.